Hey everybody, happy Valentine's Day! Whatever that is. It's Valentine's Day and it's also Marriage Moment Day. And we have been taking the last 6 weeks during this Marriage Moment video to basically apply the love chapter, which we're talking about on Sunday mornings, the specific attributes and actions of love. And this week we were on Love is Not Rude from 1 Corinthians 13:5, I believe. Love is not rude. And rude means several different things, but in this context it means it does not belittle. It doesn't put others down. And that is an important thing to think about in marriage. So let's talk just a little bit about what does it look like in your marriage for love not to be rude? What do you think we need to talk about?
Well, as we've been just discussing and thinking about this the last few days, we thought about the people that you live with at home, and especially your partner. It's very tempting to kind of let your guard down, and they're the people that you treat the worst. Like, you would be respectful to the waiter and a total stranger, but then you go home and maybe you're having a bad day, or for whatever reason you're tired. You treat the people that are closest to you that you love the most, sometimes we treat them the worst.
That's very true.
And so I could see how rudeness would come into play.
Maybe enter into relationships, your close relationships, before they enter into somebody else's. Because you're so prone to just let your guard down and say whatever you want to say.
Yeah. So when I read, I just checked to see what marriagemoment.org said about
Marriage moment.
being rude. It's talking about speaking and acting in a way that is indecent, that's offensive to someone else, and dishonoring, that you show dishonor.
Yeah. That kind of speech, purposefully dishonoring somebody with your words, that is not supposed to be a part of your life as a Christian, but especially in your marriage. I just don't think it's excusable to intentionally wound your spouse with offensive words that you know are going to hurt them. It's just not something we should do.
Yeah.
Love does not do that.
Yeah. And it's possible that sometimes we don't realize that we have offended
That's
our
different.
partner.
Yeah. But when you use your words as a weapon and you know you're using your words to hurt, it is very, very damaging and has no place in marriage.
Yeah.
Accidentally, from time to time, we'll say something that we didn't know was going to hurt the spouse, and then we need to make amends for that.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that it was talking about was, and I think this is encompassed in being rude, that you do things and say things that embarrass the other person, especially if it's in mixed company or around family and around strangers, around, your friends. That would definitely be something that would be very hurtful.
I had a mentor who used to tell us that you should never ever trust a man who publicly puts down his wife, who publicly belittles, speaks bad about his wife. And I have found that to be true over and over and over again. Men that are willing to do that, don't trust him.
Yeah. So I thought about a couple of things too that basically we have to think about, that we don't want to offend the ear from what we say, and we don't want to offend the heart.
Right.
So we want to be really careful that's our most important person in our life. Of course, we don't want to offend their ear or their heart.
Right.
And then it also made me think about, especially when a couple has children still living at home, raising kids. Can you imagine what your family is learning if you are being rude to your spouse in front of the family and being rude to them too? What they're learning about how to treat people and how marriage might be. Of course, it could go the other way too. If you're not being rude and you're teaching kindness and patience and not being rude, not being proud, which is something that, when I really think about it, I've started teaching kindergarten. This is my first year teaching kindergarten, and there's a lot of stuff that we learn in kindergarten that are all these things about love: being kind, being patient and waiting your turn, not being rude to people around you and being friends, So maybe it's that everything you learned in kindergarten was enough to set you up
Yeah.
for a great marriage.
And I think there's a childish side of that when we are boastful and prideful and rude, according to that scripture in 1 Corinthians 13, that's childish. And Paul talks about, when I was a child, I acted like a child. And he's basically telling these Corinthians, hey, the way you're treating each other, you're acting like kindergartners. You need to stop acting like children and grow up. And I think that's kind of hurtful and right in your face from Paul, but probably exactly right.
Yeah. So we were trying to think of how this would play out just in daily life. And one way that it comes up that you might not have ever thought about was like if we made plans and we were going to meet somewhere for supper, or you were going to wait on me at the store or something. And if I don't make that a priority and I just am late every time we make a commitment of meeting, and I just blow it off and think that that's no big deal, it's actually coming from that arrogant mindset, and it's actually very rude.
My time is more important than hers.
Yeah, that I'm more
than
important
yours.
than you. It kind of comes from what we've talked about these last 2 weeks
Right.
too. But I think that's a way that it plays out in our marriage that we need to think about that.
So what would be the opposite of rude? If love is not rude, then it must be whatever rudeness is not. So what do we let's think about that. What if we're not going to express love rudely, how should we express love?
I think it needs to show honor.
Honor,
It needs to be respectful,
absolutely. Courteous,
courteous, showing manners.
manners. The King James version, you read the King James. I read it
Yes.
on Sunday morning. The King James translation is,
It says, "Love doth not behave itself.
love doth
unseemly."
not behave itself unseemingly. That's how you're supposed to do King James.
Oh yeah.
To behave unseemingly. It's a strange way to put it, but it means to just be a turd. Love isn't a jerk. Love isn't loud and rude and in your face. It's gentle. It's
Yeah.
kind. It's compassionate.
I think that's a big thing. When you told the story yesterday in the sermon of Jesus and the blind men, and he was in a hurry, he had a lot of things going on.
Nobody busier than Jesus.
Right. And especially at that time. And he heard them call out to him, and he stopped everything he was doing, and he took the time and had compassion and made them a priority. And I think if we look at that and put that light into our marriage, that, if you need something, because I know if I ever text you or call you, I know pretty much whatever you're doing, you're going to stop and answer me because I am really important to you, and that's part of our marriage, and I do the same thing for you. I think that's being courteous and being respectful, and that's another way that plays out in marriage.
Stopping what you're doing for your spouse.
Yeah.
It's good.
Not for everybody, but for...
You can't for everybody,
No.
but especially for your spouse. Take the time to stop what you're doing. Well, the bottom line for Sunday's sermon was, when love has its way, rudeness goes away. But I really like my best bottom line for that sermon was, quit being rude, idiot. That's our marriage advice for the day. Quit being rude.
That pretty much sums it up.
Love is not rude. We'll see you next week.